Sheryl Swoopes just got publicly checked, and not by a rookie or a commentator, but by one of the most respected veterans in the WNBA. Kelsey Mitchell, the silent backbone of the Indiana Fever, has finally broken her silence, and what she said just flipped the entire league narrative on its head. After months of watching Swoopes criticize Caitlin Clark, calling her overrated, overhyped, and media-made, Mitchell has had enough. She didn't just clap back. She dismantled the bitterness and replaced it with something the WNBA desperately needed: truth. For nearly a year, Kelsey Mitchell stood quietly in the background, smiling through post-game interviews, delivering efficient performances, and refusing to join the noise. But behind that calm exterior was a player watching the league she helped carry slowly divide itself. On one side, the new wave led by Caitlin Clark, whose stardom reshaped women's basketball overnight. On the other, bitter veterans and pundits who couldn't stand seeing the spotlight shift. But now, that silence has shattered. In a new interview that's sending shockwaves through the sports world, Mitchell finally said what many players have been too afraid to admit: Caitlin Clark changed everything. The arenas, the viewership, the money, the energy, all of it. And Mitchell, who has survived the absolute worst years in Indiana Fever history, wasn't about to let jealousy or old guard resentment poison what's finally becoming a golden era. Her tone wasn't defensive, it was powerful, deliberate, and dripping with the authority of someone who's seen both sides' obscurity and resurrection. She didn't need to name names. The subtext was loud enough. The criticism from former legends like Sheryl Swoopes isn't leadership, it's insecurity. Mitchell made it clear that tearing down Clark isn't protecting the league's legacy, it's suffocating it. And coming from a player who's lived through losing seasons, empty arenas, and zero national recognition, her words carried the weight of credibility no pundit can match. When Kelsey Mitchell speaks now, it's not just commentary, it's testimony. She's been the lone survivor of Indiana's rebuild, the franchise's emotional compass, and the bridge between two eras. And now she's saying what every true fan already feels in their gut. Enough with the pettiness. It's time to grow the game. Her voice is calm, but her message is a thunderclap through the WNBA's halls. The future is here, and it wears a Fever jersey. When Kelsey Mitchell speaks, people listen, not because of hype or social media clout, but because of history. This is a woman who has lived through the kind of losing seasons that would break lesser players. She's been the quiet constant through years of chaos, roster changes, coaching overhauls, and endless rebuild. So when she finally decided to speak up about Caitlin Clark and the direction of the WNBA, it wasn't a PR move. It was a declaration from someone who has earned her voice. Let's be real, Mitchell has seen it all. When the Indiana Fever were barely winning 5 games a season, when their games drew small crowds and even smaller media coverage, she still showed up, night after night. She put her head down and produced. No cameras, no endorsements, no viral moment, just consistency, professionalism, and unshakable loyalty. So now, when she praises Caitlin Clark, it means more than a tweet or a podcast soundbite. It's not about clout, it's about credibility. Reporters often forget that leadership doesn't always look like a headline. It looks like showing up when nobody's watching. And that's exactly what Mitchell did for years. So when she says Caitlin changed the world, she's not exaggerating. She's not reading from a PR script. She's acknowledging something deeper, that Clark's arrival didn't just make the Fever famous, it validated the struggle Mitchell endured to keep the team alive in the first place. But here's what makes her statement even more impactful. Mitchell isn't someone who needs the spotlight. She's not defending Clark because it benefits her image. In fact, she could have easily resented the attention Clark brought, but instead, she embraced it. Because real leaders understand that growth isn't a threat, it's a blessing. That's why her words sting for people like Sheryl Swoopes. When Kelsey speaks, there's no agenda, no bitterness, just truth forged in experience. Her voice isn't just that of a player, it's the voice of survival, of a veteran who carried a broken franchise long enough to see it reborn. She's not defending Caitlin because she's obligated to. She's defending her because she recognizes greatness when she sees it. And in a league where jealousy too often drowns out unity, Kelsey Mitchell's calm authority cuts through the noise like a scalpel. So when the old guard criticizes and the media speculates, Mitchell doesn't need to shout. Her career already speaks for her. Her words carry the power of earned respect, and that's something no legend's bitterness can erase. When Kelsey Mitchell talks about Caitlin Clark, you don't hear the hollow pleasantries of a media-trained athlete. You hear truth, raw, emotional, and unfiltered. There's no forced politeness, no rehearsed "she's a great teammate" soundbite. Instead, Mitchell's tone is filled with sincerity. She looks directly into the camera, and with genuine warmth she says, "Caitlin changed the world." And in that single statement, she captures what so many have felt, but few have dared to articulate. Caitlin Clark isn't just a player, she's a movement. Mitchell's praise didn't come across as flattery, it felt like gratitude. She acknowledged that Caitlin's presence didn't just help the Fever win games, it redefined the environment around them. The packed arenas, the media buzz, the primetime coverage, none of that existed a year ago. Clark didn't just elevate Indiana, she elevated everyone around her. And Mitchell, as a seasoned veteran who has seen the dark side of this league, understood the magnitude of that transformation. Think about it. This is a player who's been through the long nights, when games were half empty, and the Fever were forgotten by the media. She knows what it's like to play for pride rather than attention. So when someone like Caitlin walks through the door, and suddenly the world pays attention, it's not resentment Mitchell feels, it's appreciation. She knows the value of that spotlight, because she's lived without it for so long. And yet her praise wasn't one-sided. She didn't paint Caitlin as flawless or divine. What she emphasized was Clark's grace, the humility with which she's handled the pressure, the criticism, and the astronomical expectation. Mitchell said she loves the teammate in her, because Clark didn't walk into Indiana demanding worship. She walked in with open arms, ready to learn, to uplift, to build something real. That's why Mitchell's words hit harder than any endorsement from a commentator. They come from inside the trenches, from a player who's earned her stripes. Her recognition of Clark's impact isn't fanfare, it's validation. She's essentially saying, this kid deserves every ounce of credit she's getting. And when a veteran like Mitchell says that, it shuts down every bitter argument that tries to discredit Clark's success. It's a reminder that greatness recognizes greatness. And in a world where jealousy too often dictates headlines, Kelsey Mitchell chose something radical, honest. She didn't defend Caitlin Clark out of obligation. She did it out of respect. And in doing so, she didn't just uplift her teammate. She elevated the entire conversation around women's basketball. In an era where locker rooms often fracture under the weight of ego, envy, and individual brand building, Kelsey Mitchell's next revelation stopped fans in their tracks. She didn't just call Caitlin Clark a teammate, she called her a friend. And in professional sports, that word carries more weight than most realize. Teammate means obligation, friend means trust, it means emotional investment, it means unit. And when Mitchell used that word, it told the world something powerful. Caitlin Clark hasn't just joined the Fever, she's healed them. Mitchell's tone during this part of the interview was noticeably soft, but deliberate. She looked into the camera, smiled, and said, "Give yourself some grace, kid. You've done a lot of things not a lot of people can do. I'll always be a fan, I'll always be in your corner, and I'll always be in your backcourt." That wasn't just a statement of support, it was a public vow of solidarity. In that moment, the veteran who's seen it all, who's carried this franchise through the years of irrelevance, made it clear, this isn't jealousy, this is sisterhood. What makes this so remarkable is the contrast. We've seen stars from past generations, some of them legends, go out of their way to minimize Clark's impact. The narrative of she hasn't earned it yet, or she's just hype, has echoed from press rooms and podcasts. Yet here's Kelsey Mitchell, someone who had every reason to feel overshadowed, saying the exact opposite. She's not guarding her territory, she's welcoming the change, because she understands that real legacy isn't about keeping the spotlight, it's about passing it on with grace. And that's exactly what Caitlin Clark has inspired. She didn't walk into that locker room demanding respect. She earned it every single day. She treats her teammates as equals, listens, learns, and celebrates their success as if it were her own. Mitchell sees that, she feels, and in her eyes, Clark isn't a rival, she's a revelation. Together they've forged something far more powerful than chemistry. Trust. That's the secret ingredient behind the Fever's newfound fire. Their success isn't built on flashy stats or media hype. It's built on the unspoken bond between players who genuinely want each other to win. When Mitchell called Clark a friend, she wasn't speaking from PR polish. She was speaking from the heart. It was a statement that said, "We're in this together, we're building something bigger than ourselves." And that's why fans connected so deeply to that moment. It's rare, it's real, it's the kind of authenticity the WNBA has been starving. While others throw shade from the sidelines, Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark are proving that collaboration, not competition, is the true engine of greatness. Let's address the elephant in the room. For months, WNBA legend Sheryl Swoopes has been leading a crusade against Caitlin Clark's meteoric rise, questioning her stats, doubting her accolades, and dismissing her impact as nothing more than a media creation. But now, Kelsey Mitchell, who has every reason to feel overshadowed, just flipped that narrative upside down. And in doing so, she didn't just defend Clark, she exposed the bitterness simmering beneath the surface of the league's old guard. Here's why Mitchell's words cut so deep. Swoopes represents an era of excellence, an icon who helped build the WNBA from the ground up. But instead of celebrating the next generation, she spent the past year publicly downplaying the player responsible for the league's biggest boom in decades. And that's what made Mitchell's comments so explosive. She didn't attack Swoopes directly, she didn't need to, the contrast alone was a knockout blow. While Swoopes used her platform to tear down, Mitchell used hers to build. She praised Caitlin Clark, not just as a player, but as a transformational force. She made it clear that Clark's arrival didn't take anything away from veterans like her. It added value, it opened doors, it reignited fan passion, and it brought the WNBA into living rooms around the world. And by saying that, Mitchell exposed something that's been festering for a while, the generational divide in women's basketball. Mitchell's statement essentially asked one uncomfortable question, one that Swoopes can't easily answer. If a veteran like me who's carried the Fever through their darkest years can embrace Clark's success with humility and gratitude, why can't you? That rhetorical punch didn't need to be shouted, it just needed to be said once, with quiet conviction. This wasn't just a defense of a teammate, it was a cultural reset. Mitchell forced the WNBA community to confront a painful truth. Too many of its legends are spending more time criticizing the next generation than mentoring them. Instead of protecting the league's legacy, that attitude poisons it. And Mitchell's calm, confident demeanor made Swoopes' bitterness look exactly like what it is. Small. The irony is, Swoopes once was Caitlin Clark, a player who drew attention, broke barriers, and changed how the world viewed women's basketball. But somewhere along the line, that pride turned into resentment. Mitchell's comments, though wrapped in grace, felt like a mirror held up to that hypocrisy. The message was clear, the league can't move forward while its pioneers keep trying to pull the brake. And Kelsey Mitchell, through her integrity, her performance, and her loyalty, just reminded everyone that evolution isn't betrayal, it's progress. In just a few sentences, she redefined what leadership looks like in today's WNBA. And she did it without insults, without drama, just truth. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to admit. Success in sports is rarely shared equally. When a star like Caitlin Clark steps into the spotlight, she doesn't just draw attention, she reshapes where that attention goes. Suddenly the cameras tilt, the headlines shift, and the narrative changes. And for veterans like Kelsey Mitchell, who've carried this franchise through years of irrelevance, that kind of shift could easily spark resentment. But instead of fighting for credit, Mitchell made a radical choice. She redefined what legacy actually means. During her now viral interview, Mitchell didn't demand recognition for what she's done. She didn't remind the world that she was the Fever's cornerstone, long before Clark arrived. She didn't say, "Don't forget me." She said in essence, "We're winning now. That's what matters." And that subtle humility spoke volumes, because while the rest of the league wrestles with ego and envy, Kelsey Mitchell is proving that greatness isn't about who gets the loudest applause. It's about who's still standing when the noise fades. This isn't just a story about basketball, it's about leadership, maturity, and emotional intelligence. Mitchell knows that history will always remember Clark's impact on the league, but she also knows that the people who matter, her teammates, her coaches, her fans, see the deeper picture. They see that none of this transformation happens without her quiet consistency. She's the anchor that keeps the ship stable, while the storm of fame swirls around them. Mitchell's balance between humility and pride is something most athletes never master. She recognizes that Caitlin Clark deserves her flowers, but she also understands that her own contributions don't need to be shouted to be felt. She's playing chess while others are playing checkers. Every assist, every defensive rotation, every veteran conversation off the court, those are the unseen moments that make the Fever function as a team and not a one-woman show. And that's what makes her so respected inside that locker room. She's not chasing headlines, she's chasing banners. Her understanding of legacy is rooted in collective triumph. She doesn't need the credit because she's part of something bigger. In a sports culture obsessed with individual accolades, that's a radical stance. But make no mistake, Mitchell's humility isn't submission, it's strength. Because when you've truly done the work, you don't need validation to know your worth. You just keep winning, keep showing up, and let the record speak for itself. And right now, that record says this: the Indiana Fever are relevant again, not because of one star, but because of a culture built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Kelsey Mitchell has become the bridge between eras, the player who understands both the grind of the past and the glory of the present. She's showing the entire league how to evolve with dignity, and in a way, her greatest legacy may not be her points or stats. It may be the example she's setting right now. Let's be honest, the WNBA right now is divided. Not officially, not on paper, but emotionally, culturally, and generationally. The divide is visible in interviews, social media posts, and even on the court. On one side, you have the veterans, the ones who fought for every inch of recognition, clawed their way through years of underfunding, and earned their status the hard way. On the other side, you have a new generation led by Caitlin Clark. Players who are breaking barriers not just through skill, but through visibility. They're being marketed, televised, and celebrated in ways their predecessors never were. And in the middle of that tension stands Kelsey Mitchell, holding the line, bridging the gap, and reminding everyone what the game is really about. When Mitchell speaks, she does so with the credibility of experience and the clarity of purpose. She's not naive about the tension swirling through the league. She knows the whispers, the eye rolls, the resentment that follows Clark every time she gets a primetime slot or a Nike commercial. But instead of feeding into the bitterness, Mitchell is doing something revolutionary. She's choosing unity. She's using her voice to silence division and remind her peers that every step forward for one player is a step forward for all. In her latest remarks, you could hear that leadership resonate through every word. When she said she was in Caitlin's corner, it wasn't just a statement of friendship, it was a statement of principle. She was saying, I refuse to let jealousy tear us apart, because Mitchell understands something too many forget. The WNBA's growth depends on collaboration, not competition within its own ranks. Every player benefits when the league wins, when the spotlight expands, when fans who tuned in for Caitlin stay for everyone else. And here's the thing, the league needs more voices like hers. Because the truth is, the divide isn't just about fame, it's about identity, about generational pride, about feeling unseen after years of sacrifice. Mitchell gets that pain. She's lived it, but she's also wise enough to see that tearing down new stars won't heal it. It will only deepen the wound. Instead, she's modeling a different kind of leadership, one that embraces change, even when it challenges your comfort zone. Her approach is quiet but powerful. She's not lecturing anyone. She's living the example. Every time she celebrates Clark's success instead of competing with it, she chips away at that invisible wall separating the league's past from its future. And that's what makes her stand out. In a world addicted to outrage, Mitchell's calm unity feels radical. It's not weakness, it's vision. Because here's the bigger truth, unity sells, unity inspires, and unity builds legacy. When fans see teammates genuinely supporting each other, especially across generational lines, They don't just watch the game, they believe in it. And that's how movements are born. Kelsey Mitchell is proving that the most powerful statement a player can make isn't in their stat line, it's in their solidarity. If the WNBA follows her lead, the divide that once threatened to tear it apart might just become the bridge that carries it forward. It's easy to talk about Caitlin Clark in terms of basketball, her pinpoint shooting, her court vision, her ability to draw double teams from the half-court line. But what Kelsey Mitchell reminded everyone of is that Clark's influence goes far beyond the stat sheet. In fact, it's not an exaggeration to say she's altering the entire landscape of women's sports. Ticket sales, TV deals, sponsorships, everything is changing because of her presence. And for the first time in a long time, the WNBA feels urgent. It feels, when Kelsey Mitchell spoke about Clark, she didn't frame her as just a teammate or even as a superstar. She spoke about her like a phenomenon. She changed the world, Mitchell said, and those words weren't hyperbole. They were, you can see it in the sold-out arenas across the country, in the millions of views her highlights rack up overnight, and in the countless young girls showing up to games wearing 20. Caitlin Clark has become the cultural heartbeat of a sport that's been waiting for its defining moment. And Mitchell is one of the few veterans brave enough to celebrate that without insecurity. It's not just about fame, it's about what that fame represents. Clark's story, rising from Iowa, shattering NCAA records, walking into the pros with poise and pressure, symbolizes possibility. It tells every young athlete watching that you can play your game your way and still change the world. And Mitchell, who's been part of the league long enough to see both the struggles and the growth, knows how rare that kind of lightning is. Instead of resenting it, she's channeling it. She's using Clark's rise as fuel to push the Fever and the WNBA into a new era. Off the court, the impact is even more staggering. Merchandise sales have exploded. Attendance records have been shattered. TV ratings for Fever games have outpaced some NBA broadcasts. But beneath all that noise, there's something more meaningful happening. The kind of belief that women's basketball has fought decades to earn. Corporate sponsors are investing more. Young fans are dreaming bigger. And yes, veterans are starting to feel that surge of energy too. The league that once felt stagnant now feels unstoppable. Mitchell recognizes that none of this success belongs to one person. It belongs to a movement. But movements always need catalysts. And Caitlin Clark has become exactly that. She's opened doors that were bolted shut for years. She's shifted the public perception of women's basketball from niche to mainstream. And perhaps most importantly, she's done it with humility. No theatrics, no ego, just hard work, joy and passion. That's what Kelsey Mitchell sees when she looks at her teammate. Not a threat, but a mirror. A reminder that greatness doesn't diminish others. It awakens them. And that's why her praise matters so much. Because it's not just about what Clark is doing on the court, it's about what she's unlocking off of it. Kelsey Mitchell's acknowledgement of that truth made one thing crystal clear. Caitlin Clark isn't just changing games, she's changing lives. And for the first time, everyone from rookies to veterans to fans can feel that shift happening in real time. Every era of sports has its breaking point, a moment when the old guard collides with the new, and the culture either evolves or collapses. In the WNBA, that moment has a name. Caitlin Clark and her rise hasn't just shaken up the league. It's exposed the fault lines within. For months, critics have been circling her like vultures. Some accuse her of being overhyped. Others argue that the media is obsessed with her at the expense of black players who built this league from the ground up. But when Kelsey Mitchell stepped forward with her message of unity and respect, she didn't just defend Clark, she redefined the conversation entirely. Mitchell's words forced everyone to confront a truth most are too uncomfortable to say out loud. This isn't about race or favoritism. It's about change. It's about what happens when a player becomes too big for the system that created her. Clark isn't the first star to draw massive attention, but she's the first to make the mainstream care about women's basketball in a way that's sustainable. That's what's threatening. Not her color, not her fame, her path. And Mitchell's defense of her wasn't just about friendship. It was about fairness. She reminded the public that growth doesn't erase history. It honors it by expanding it. Mitchell's approach is what separates her from the norm. While critics like Sheryl Swoopes and others wage cultural battles on podcasts and talk shows, Mitchell is leading with perspective. She's seen the struggle for visibility firsthand. She's felt the sting of being overlooked. So when she looks at Clark's spotlight, she doesn't see injustice, she sees opportunity. Opportunity for the league to expand, for salaries to rise, for sponsorships to multiply, for every player to benefit from the surge of interest. That's the kind of wisdom you only get from someone who understands that success isn't a zero-sum game. But the critics, they're stuck in a mindset built on scarcity, on the belief that if one woman shines, others must dim. And that's what Mitchell is rejecting. Her message is clear: there's room for everyone. Clark's fame doesn't threaten the legacy of players who came before. It validates it, because without their foundation, there's no platform for Caitlyn to stand on. Mitchell's call for grace isn't weakness, it's evolution. It's the recognition that you can't build the future by dragging the past through the mud. What makes this cultural shift so fascinating is that it's happening in real time. We're watching the WNBA wrestle with its identity on a public stage. The critics want control. The culture wants freedom. And right now, unity is winning. Because players like Kelsey Mitchell are refusing to take the bait. She's choosing collaboration over confrontation, vision over vanity. And whether the critics like it or not, fans are responding to that. That's the real shift happening here. For the first time, the narrative isn't being controlled by the loudest voices. It's being shaped by the most authentic ones. And authenticity always wins. Mitchell's honesty, Clark's humility, and their shared respect are building something critics can't destroy. The truth is, every revolution has resistance. But history only remembers the ones who moved things forward. And right now it's Kelsey Mitchell, not the critics, who's writing that history. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're witnessing right now in Indiana isn't just a team winning games. It's a cultural rebirth. The Indiana Fever, once a franchise buried in mediocrity and overlooked by even the most loyal fans, has become the beating heart of the WNBA. And at the center of this transformation are four names that will be etched into basketball history: Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Lexi Hull, the Fab Four who have turned the league on its head. But let's be clear, this isn't just about talent. It's about timing, chemistry, and courage. Kelsey Mitchell has been through the wilderness. She's played through losing seasons, empty arenas, and rebuilds that went nowhere. Yet she never left. She never stopped believing that Indiana could rise again. Now alongside Caitlin Clark, a rookie who has single-handedly changed how the world views women's basketball, Mitchell is finally reaping what she sowed. This duo has given the Fever something they haven't had in a decade: hope with substance. When you watch the Fever now, you can feel it. The energy, the unity, the belief. This isn't just a roster, it's a movement. Mitchell's leadership has matured into mentorship, and her willingness to embrace Clark's spotlight, instead of competing against it, has created something rare in professional sports: harmony. Instead of egos clashing, you have synergy. Instead of jealousy, you have Mitchell's willingness to say, "I'll take less money if it means we can keep this core together," speaks volumes. It's not about the paycheck anymore. It's about legacy. Caitlin Clark's influence has been undeniable. She's brought national coverage, global viewership, and financial power to a league that's fought tooth and nail for recognition. But it's Kelsey Mitchell who ensures that all that attention translates into something meaningful. She grounds the hype in reality. She embodies the soul of the franchise, the resilience, the authenticity, the loyalty, and together they've built a model for what the WNBA's future could look like. Collaborative greatness. Critics like Sheryl Swoopes have tried to downplay. They've framed Clark's success as a threat, as if her rise somehow undermines everything that came before. But what Mitchell and the Fever have proven is the opposite. Clark's ascent doesn't erase the legends. It amplifies them. Every sellout crowd, every trending highlight, every new fan pouring into the sport is a ripple effect of decades of struggle, sweat, and sacrifice. And Mitchell, by choosing grace over grievance, has positioned herself as the bridge between eras, The voice reminding everyone that progress doesn't come from division. It comes from evolution. This team, this moment feels bigger than basketball. It's symbolic of something our culture has been craving. Women standing together, building each other up, creating excellence without bitterness. It's not just about the Fever's playoff run, or their on-court chemistry. It's about rewriting the emotional DNA of the league. For years, the WNBA has been fighting for legitimacy. Now it's fighting for dominance, and Indiana is leading that charge. So, when Kelsey Mitchell looked into that camera and said, "Caitlin, you've changed the world," it wasn't flattery, it was prophecy. Because this movement isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. The Fever aren't just a good team. They're a symbol of what happens when belief meets opportunity. Mitchell's loyalty, Clark's star power, Boston's strength, and Hull's hustle have fused into something unstoppable. And as the rest of the league watches, one thing is clear: the old guard can either adapt or get left behind. The WNBA's new era has already begun, and its epicenter, Indianapolis, Indiana, the house that Kelsey Mitchell built, now powered by Caitlin Clark's luck. This is the dawn of a dynasty, and if you're not paying attention yet, you're already too late.